got them deep river blues. Let the rain drive right on, but let those waves just sweep along, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Now my old gal, she's a good old pal. She looks like a waterfowl when I get them deep river blues. Let the rain drive right on, let those waves just sweep along, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Something like that.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you. I am off my couch and into my folk element. This is Greg OHaver. And how long have you been playing?
I just started about a minute ago. Don't you remember? Oh, I'm sorry. Since grade school, when I started playing guitar. So, yeah, it's been a while.
Oh, so did you start guitar, go to other instruments too?
Yeah, banjo. I'm primarily a guitar player, but I play banjo and some other stringed instruments, a little bit of flute. But
okay.
That's what I do.
That's what you do. And so, when was your first professional gig playing as a kid? Did you have the proverbial band in high school type thing? Or?
I had a trio in high school. I graduated in '63 and went to Howe High School, and a couple of my classmates who I'll be visiting with tomorrow at our yearly reunion picnic, and we had a group called the Newtown Trio, and I think our first gig, there used to be a fellow out here in town named Jim Shelton. Okay. And Jim Shelton was a DJ, he was a weatherman, he was Monday through Friday, every day he would be on the Circle downtown, the Circle Theater, doing his Pick-a-Pocket show, which took him all over the world. And he was very well known back in those days, but he had this suit with lots of pockets every place. Okay. And he would stop people in the street. You would pick a pocket. It would have a question in it and a particular. It's like trading for door number 1 or door number 2, and so you'd pick a pocket. He would take the question out, and 99.9% of the time say not one of the big ones. But and then he'd give the question, and you'd win $5, $10, $15, whatever. And but I knew Jim. My folks knew him and so on. And anyway, I saw him one day and he said, hey, I told him about the group. He said, we're doing a dance at the Miramar Club on the east side this coming Saturday night. Why don't you guys come and play in between the sets of the rock group? And so the three of us showed up, and I think he paid us $25 for the three of us, which...
That's a lot at that
63, time. That first time we got paid, it was better than nothing. And so we went there, and the rock band stopped, and then we came out with 3 guitars around 1 microphone, and we started singing songs. But while I was up there, it was like Ricky Nelson on the Ozzie and Harriet show. Oh. When he would just sing a song, and he'd be singing, and then they'd pan out to all the girls in the front row.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And that's what was happening. And I thought, well, this is like Ricky gets, And then we got done with our set, and we put our guitars away, stood up, turned around, and there were all these pretty girls were lined up. Would you like to dance? And it was like, sure. And so we ended up dancing away the rest of the night, and that's when a little light bulb, light bulb that goes off right up here. And I thought, wow, playing music for a living might be fun. And it was a life-changing moment. So that was the first paying gig, and it set the tone.
Set the tone.
For ruining my first 2 marriages.
no.
but anyway, we won't go there.
Well,
So,
and where did you go from there, though?
well, I did solo work. I went to IU, studied more music and folk music stuff like that than anything else while I was down there,
Okay.
and then I went out to LA and lived out there in the last half of the '60s, and I worked for Randy Sparks at he had a club called Ledbetter's,
Okay.
and pardon me, and it was where he developed people. Now, Randy is the one that started the new Christy Minstrels in 1961, and he.
For people who may not be as familiar, their big hit was Green Green.
Well,
I
Green
would say,
Green,
and
yeah.
a lot of people are familiar with that who I would say kind of cross over, you know, not particularly folk people, but I know that people who are following rock and roll are familiar with that song. So I mentioned that. So
Yeah, Barry
people-
McGuire,
yeah.
that song was his idea, but he'd never written a song, so he wrote down what he could, and then he went to Randy, and Randy helped him finish the song. So the two of them are the co-writers on that song. But our first hit was a thing called This Land Is Your Land, which is an old Woody Guthrie song.
Right.
Now Guthrie wrote it as a protest song. The band has always done it as a patriotic song, but during the Cuban Missile Crisis, there were all the DJs were looking for patriotic songs because it was a tense time, and they found this new group called the New Christy Minstrels. This Land Is Your Land, and it took off, and it was a big hit. So that was the first hit for the group.
Okay.
So, but anyway, by the last half of the '60s, I was working for Randy out at Ledbetter's, and working every night with people like Steve Martin and of course John Denver got his start there.
Mm-hmm.
The Carpenters started there. Kenny Rogers. So many people started in that place, and working for Randy. So
I know Kenny Rogers was with the New Christy Minstrels, was he not?
Kenny and the whole first edition were in the Christies at the time. So the
Okay.
whole first edition came out of the Christies, and Randy gave them their first job at Ledbetter's.
Okay.
And but all those people, Ken Vassy, who was part of the first edition, was great singer. He did all the rock songs, and Kenny Rogers did all the ballads, and it's a good group.
Yeah.
It's a real good group.
I do admit to being a fan.
Oh yeah.
We've listened to the albums at the house all the time. When how was I going to put that? When we had the old turntable. I do have a CD in the car actually. Still listen to.
They did a great double album called The Ballad of Calico, which was written by Michael Martin Murphy. All the material was written by Michael, and Michael came out of Ledbetter's as well, and it was he wrote about this old, I think it's a silver mining town out in California called Calico, and he went and researched all the people and everything, and he wrote songs about this ghost town, and it's just a wonderful album. And the first edition did that, and weren't any hits off of it, but it was a wonderful album. Yeah.
So at the time though, you didn't play with the New Christy Minstrels.
No, I was working for Randy at Ledbetter's, and playing around LA at the time, and meeting different people, and I was there till '69, and then I came back home and started a group here in Indianapolis called Pleasant Street.
Okay.
And we played at the Old Flaming Hearths and places like that. To travel the Midwest primarily, and
Yeah, you mentioned the Flaming Hearth. You were talking to me before we started rolling about this stool you're sitting on, and that's such a fun story.
there's an old menu next to that hanging cobweb.
Oh.
That's the Old Flaming Hearth menu.
Oh.
Steaks were like $3.95, like for a good T-bone. You had to pay $4.50 for a fillet, but
Oh, okay.
prices were good back then.
So, but you were telling me how you got that stool.
Oh, the stool. The group I had called Pleasant Street. We did very well. We were very popular, especially around Indianapolis. Had our own TV show for a while and stuff, but we were setting up at the Nora Flaming Hearth, and we didn't do dance music. We did show type stuff, and so they had to pick up the dance floor they had in there and take it out and put tables in, and these two kids dropped the the dance floor on my stool that I used, and so I took one of theirs. It needs to be reupholstered, but hey,
But I think
works
that
fine.
that's a fun relic because, like I said, I know there are people who have a real interest in the businesses that are no longer, as we call that. So that's
Flaming Hearth, they
Yeah.
actually had 4 clubs around Indianapolis,
Yeah.
and very popular, good food, and you could go in and see a nice show. You know, people they got entertained.
yeah. No, I remember going there as a kid, so that brought back a lot of memories. Just you mentioning that.
Was that with a fake ID?
And at the time,
You probably just went in and ate.
Right, we just went in and ate,
Yeah.
and I always remember they used to have this kind of thing, some kind of a promotion with the kids. If you'd weigh them and they'd get some kind of a special price based on what they weighed.
On poundage?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
The Nora Flaming Hearth was one of their smallest restaurant.
Oh.
The Speedway Hearth, that entertainment room seated around 300 people.
Oh.
So it was much bigger. And
Yeah.
then Greenwood was kind of in between the two. Then they had a place called Cattleman's out in Greenfield.
I kind of remember that name. So,
Yeah, yeah. So good people. Bill D. Michelle was the guy that owned that. And,
So how many years was that then?
oh, we played for them for
Pleasant
several
Street.
years. Pleasant Street lasted into the mid-'60s. And we expanded at one point, and we were a 4-piece group, and we wanted a 5th member who could just add another little more dimension to us. And we held auditions, and we hired a guy that he was working for some factory out in Speedway. His name was Bill Wilson. I don't know if you know who Bill was, or
It's one of those names that I feel like I should know,
Bill was a very accomplished songwriter, singer, a writer, instrumentalist, and an artist too. And he did a couple albums for Columbia as a soloist. But we gave him his first job, got him out of the factory, and but he died back in the early '90s. And but a very talented guy, and still pretty well known with people that have been around a while anyway. So, gosh, it's going to be close to 30 years he's been gone. Gee.
Oh, wow.
Time do move on, doesn't it?
Oh. And after Pleasant Street, we're just going to take you through your history here.
Well, the group grew, and we became the Buffalo Brothers, and we had 10 pieces. We had a 4-piece horn section,
Oh my goodness.
which was interesting because we did instrumentals with horn section and the banjo, and things like Pig Snoots and Knee High Red. Just stuff you've never heard, but it was fun stuff, and working with 10 pieces like that, and that group played for a couple years. We worked with Gentle Ben,
Oh.
which was kind of interesting, but had a good time doing that, and then I went out back on doing solo work, and then I started having kids and stuff, and I settled down and stuck close to home at that point, and until they got old enough to kind of be out on their own, and then I went back to playing music. Back around, what was it, 87, 89, I married a girl named Jeannie McGill, and she was in a group called Shiloh Morning, one of the founding members of that group, which was a wonderful group. They did mostly college concerts, but they did covers as well as original material, and just an outstanding group. And she was one of the lead singers with that group, and so we got married, and then we started a group called Crossover Road, which was a contemporary Christian band. Well, you see the Crossover Road, that's a little thing I made up for the band, and we did that for a number of years, and then towards the end of the 90s, Jeannie got cancer, and we fought that until 2010 when she went home, and then and like I say, then it was about a month later. Randy called me up and asked me if I wanted to get out of the house, and I said, "Yeah, I do."
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was going to do, and it was a real blessing. And so I went with back to the new Christy Minstrels, and we had some good people. It became a second family to me, and still is to this day. We've lost a couple people over the years now, but still have some great people. Our bass singer is Dave Dutchendorf, who's John Denver's uncle.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, Randy Sparks is the one who gave John his last name.
Now, I didn't know that.
John wanted to go by Henry John Dutchendorf.
Oh.
Randy said, no, that's not going to fit on anybody's marquee. And so finally, Randy had a song. Actually, it was our first regional hit that was our own. Randy had written it, and it was called Denver. And it was, when I say regional hit, it was a hit in Colorado. So,
Okay.
and so we, when that came out, he was looking for a name for John, and finally came up with Denver, John Denver. And John didn't want to do it to start with. He said, no, that's like Bob Denver, Gilligan, and what was his character on Dobie Gillis? He was Maynard G. Krebs. Yeah. And so Randy said, don't worry about that. He said, we do this right, nobody will remember him. They'll remember you. And John later on did an interview with Playboy magazine, and he said, I named myself Denver because of my great love of the Rocky Mountains.
And that stuck.
But it wasn't true.
It's kind of what became legend.
Right, I mean, yeah.
There was also a story he told that when he was first being introduced as a member of the Mitchell Trio, replacing Chad Mitchell, that because Joe Frazier introduced him and accidentally said Bob Denver.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that one. That's good. That's funny.
So.
Yeah.
I guess it would have to happen. You're familiar with the name.
Yeah.
So how long were you with the new Christy Minstrels then on the road?
Well, I'm next year will be 10 years on this run.
Oh, okay, so you're still running.
Oh yeah, I was out there the end of July, 1st of August, out in California. We were doing some shows. So, and I'll be back out in Colorado in September with them.
Okay.
And so.
How many people are there from the original? I know they changed up a bit. They always kept it new. I guess that was how. But.
Yeah, well, Randy's the only one now. Dolan Ellis was with us until a few years ago, and when he turned 80, I think he lives in Arizona, loves Arizona. He's the official balladeer of the state of Arizona, and has been for over 50 years. So he loves Arizona, and so he decided he wanted to quit touring at that point. And Clarence Street and Jackie Davidson and Art Podell, they left in 2010. And so our bass player for a while was Pete Henderson until just a couple years ago. And Pete, he was the second bass player in the group back in the mid-'60s. And when he left, he trained his replacement, and that was Kenny Rogers.
Oh, okay.
But Pete Henderson was half of the duo of Skiles and Henderson.
Oh.
Great, one of the great comedy duos of all time.
Yes.
80 episodes of Hollywood Squares, all the Carol Burnett, Dean Martin, Carson, Sullivan. Just one of the funniest guys you ever want to meet. And but he got some blood clots here a few years ago and on stage, and so he had to leave the road, and he died about a year ago. So we lost him, but some of those people are still around. But with the group right now, it's just Randy as far as being an original.
That's keeping him young, I think.
There's days he probably would think maybe not, but it has. He gets so much done every day, so much more than I do. He's up at 6 o'clock every morning writing for at least 3 hours.
Wow.
He still writes a couple hundred songs a year, and he's made millions as a songwriter. Because he's written songs for carpenters, you know, all kinds of people. So it's he's still very busy. He still has a good sized bucket list at 86.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That really is.
Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite song from the new Christy Minstrels that you perform?
Well, I'll tell you what. One of my favorite songs of Randy's, and he does this when we play. He is the opening act for the group. He comes out and does about 10 minutes by himself, and then he brings us out and we open up with Denver, of all things. And but he has a song that he does in his opening set. He talks about he wrote this for the last 30 years up till about mid-90s when Burl Ives died. He and Burl Ives were best friends, and he toured with Burl for over 30 years, being his opening act and being his best friend and writing a lot of songs for him too. And but he wrote this one, and it's about microbiology.
Huh.
It's just a quickie. There are little critters living in your eyebrows. There are gardens in the dirt behind your ear. And a million protozoa like the two that sailed with Noah are swimming in the rivers of your tears. Now I've heard some people say they're symbiotic, and that's better than a bunch of parasites. There's so many you can't list them. You're a walking ecosystem, and you know you can't complain of lonely nights. There are killers, there are microscopic victims, and they grapple in the jungles of your hair. Now if all this takes place in the space above your face, just think what happens in your underwear. So if you start to feel you're unimportant, and you think it doesn't matter what you do, just remember your dependents, cause they're merely a descendant of all the critters that are counting on you. All the critters that are counting on you. Now that's one of my favorite songs from Randy, anyways. It's just he writes some good funny stuff. But he helped a lot of people. Like Steve Martin came in primarily as a banjo player to Ledbetter's, and he left a wonderful comedian.
Yes.
And Randy helped him with that. Randy did think Randy was married to Diane Jurgens, very accomplished actress, and they had a home in Bel Air. It was Betty Grable's old house, and they had kids. But he would find people now and then. Steve Martin was one of them. John Denver was another. When he found somebody he thought had really good talent, he would bring them into his house and kind of keep them away from a lot of the pitfalls that could befall you in LA in the 60s. And that's what he did with Steve. Steve ended up living in this mansion, and Randy worked with him in developing his art. And from there he went to the Chad Mitchell Trio. And like I said, replaced Chad. So it's so Randy had an eye for talent. He tells a story about he had an office up above Ledbetter's, and he was in it one night, and it was Hoot Night, mid '60s, and Hoot Night was like an open mic night, and he was up in his office, and Diane came in, and she called up to him. She said, "Randy, you need to come down here and see this guy on stage." He said, "Oh, is he a good singer?" She said, "No, not really." "Good guitar player?" "No, not really." "He's a good songwriter?" She said, "No, I don't think he writes at all." He said, Diane, why do I want to come down and see this guy? He said, the audience loves him. And that got Randy to come downstairs. And that's when he first saw John Denver. And he just needed a lot of work. And so Randy and Diane took him home and gave him a name and helped him develop as an artist.
So yeah, so Randy Sparks is responsible for helping a lot of talent.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. If you look down through the discography of the people that have been in the band over the years, you've got a couple Miss Americas, you've got Broadway stars, Kim Carnes, you know, other people I mentioned before. I mean, just a lot of people were in that band. So, yeah, he had an eye for talent.
Is he still doing that then? Or is he just mostly writing?
He's mostly writing and doing other stuff like that. He's not developing new talent like he did when he was younger. No. But like I say, it's amazing that he does what he does at his age. It just, and back in 2009, right before I joined the group, he'd gone through cancer.
Oh.
And beat it. And here he is, remember what, 10 years later.
He had something to live for.
He did. He's a tough old bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're getting a lot of pleasure still playing, and I have had a lot of fun chatting with you today. How about a little This Land Is Your Land?
This land is your land. You know, everybody loves that song. The only place that it didn't go over well for us was up in Montana. We were playing for some school kids on an Indian reservation. And
you can see everybody, you can tell the enjoyment of the interview when the cameraman's laughing like that. I love that.
Actually, the kids were loving it. They were singing along, but the teachers were scowling just a bit, and after a bit the kids kind of got the idea and they stopped singing. But probably not the best place to sing "This land is your land, this land is my land," though it shouldn't be. That's all in the past, you know. But yeah. I don't sing melody on this normally. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. The sun was shining as I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving, and the dust clouds rolling. As the fog was lifting, a voice was calling. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. Everybody, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me. It's a good folk ending there, you know. I think that was probably Woody Guthrie's biggest payday. And at the Woody Guthrie Museum, down in Oklahoma, if you go in there, you will hear the new Christy Minstrels singing that song. It's looped. And so you hear it over and over and over again. But anyway, they still teach that song in schools and stuff. But I'm still doing a lot of solo work and writing songs. And the longer you're with somebody like Randy, the better your songwriting gets. And so my songwriting in the last 10 years has really improved a great deal. And which he reminds me of periodically, and I thank him. So,
Well, it's been great being here with you and chatting and singing, and we will see you next time.